Hi! Today I'm going to be telling you all about how I wrote this. This is the first draft of the book that I'm still currently working on, and currently I'm nearing the end of the second draft, but today I'm going to be specifically talking about how I wrote this first draft and the whole process from start to finish, and specifically my writing process, because I think I've developed over the course of writing this and the majority of my second draft my own unique way of writing things and my own unique way of writing a whole novel in my free time. Because I know that's something that can be a very daunting task, especially if you have no idea where to start, because when I started writing this, I didn't know what I was doing, and I had to kind of work my way along, and I had to kind of figure out how I like to do things and what worked best for me. And now I feel like I've had just enough experience for me to be able to tell you about my writing process and the things that work for me, although that is not to say that the things that I do are gonna work for you. This is mostly just for, like, if you've seen my writing vlogs and you're wondering more about my first draft process, because I haven't talked much about my first draft process in my writing vlogs or my more general writing process at all. I'm just in my writing vlogs, I'm very like, this is what I'm doing today, this is what I'm doing this week, but I want to talk more general about my writing process. So I haven't exactly thought this through, but I think I'm going to start off with talking about how I come up with ideas, and specifically how I came up with the ideas for this project and how it took me a while before I actually was ready to sit down and start writing my first draft, and before I had any ideas for a real novel. Then I guess I'll talk about my previous attempts to writing some sort of draft or like some sort of large quantity of words, because I partially participated in NaNoWriMo of 2019, and we'll get to that. And then I'll talk about me actually starting my first draft in July of 2020 and what it was like writing that first chapter, then completely rewriting it, then probably rewriting it again, and then finally being able to kind of find my footing and really making writing it a consistent thing in my daily routine. And I also want to talk about like the writing tools I use and like how I plan stuff out and how I keep track of things. So to begin, I guess I'm gonna tell you about where the origins of my characters come from, because I think for this project the characters came to me first, and the characters had existed in my mind for several years before I actually had any novel ideas, or more accurately, any plot ideas. I'm not gonna go too far into the details because I don't think that you care about the stuff that I did during my childhood, but I have always wanted to be a writer. I've always been interested in writing stories my entire life, and I've always had some like original characters floating around in my brain. And I think that two of the main characters in my books, their names are Tristan and Quinn, and I know that there's like some old art that I've done where the characters' names are Tristan and Quinn, I believe, and so I think that those two names have been floating around for a long time, but I think that their personalities and things and whatever stories I was trying to write them into has definitely changed throughout the years. But I would say that in 2018, specifically the summer of 2018, that's when I began to develop this cast of characters, specifically during a road trip, and I get a lot of my story inspiration while on road trips. I think I love road trips, and I think one of the reasons why is because I just feel so inspired, and especially when like listening to music, I think I source music as a big inspiration for my writing. And so Quinn and Tristan have remained consistent, but there were several other characters that I came up with. I think it was about a group, I think it was like a group of 6. Quinn and Tristan are the only 2 characters that have, from that group of 6, that have really stayed strong, but several of the other characters that I came up with during that time have either been changed and put into the same project I'm currently working on as side characters, or have been placed into different stories that exist in an entirely different whole other realm, which I'm not going to get into my other book ideas in this video. But moving on to September 2019, nearly a year after I initially got the ideas for the characters in this project, I began to develop much more plot things. And I swear this is directly linked to me reading I'll Give You the Sun, which is currently one of my favorite books of all time, and I think will forever remain one of my favorite books of all time, and I think is one of the biggest inspirations for my writing, specifically young adult contemporary writing. And so I think reading that really inspired me to write a story that was set during the summertime and contained a similar setting and a similar feeling as I'll Give You the Sun did. And I loved I'll Give You the Sun so much, and I was just feeling so inspired to create something of my own. But I think at this point I had decided not to include any of the other characters that I had come up with, and then just including Quinn and Tristan, I basically came up with not necessarily an outline, but more ideas for the plot of the story than just like the first chapter. Like I had ideas for what was going to happen in the future and like the places in their town that they would go to and things like that. And then I tried to write for the first time ever an actual first chapter. And I remember that feeling so vividly because it was unlike anything. Like, I had never really tried to write like a first chapter or anything of strong substance in Google Docs before, and I remember like looking at the word count, like the amount of words that I had written, and I think I wrote 1,000 words in one day after like spending probably like 2 hours or something working on it. And I was just so shocked by that. I was like, 1,000 words? And I remember reading it over and just changing things. Basically, that was a really big turning point for me because it was the first time that I had ever really wrote something that was trying to be a larger story. And then sometime between the beginning of September and the end of October of 2019, a mystery plot came to my mind. So at the end of October, suddenly, I don't know the details. This was not well over 2 years ago. This was approximately 2 years ago now. I don't remember the exact details, but basically I was like, I am going to do NaNoWriMo because I had known about what NaNoWriMo is for a very long time before this. I remember watching videos, specifically one BuzzFeed video and a bunch of NaNoWriMo videos created by this one YouTuber whose name I cannot remember, but I will find and I will put in here because her videos inspired me so much as like a young child that was probably on the internet too young. And so obviously I knew what NaNoWriMo already was, and I was like, November's coming, it's my time to shine, but there's no way in hell that I'm writing 50,000 words. So I then decided to sign up for like the Young Writers program, which I think is for 18 and under. And I created my account and I set my goal for the month of October to 20,000 total words. And I remember in like the week leading up to November, I was trying to plot stuff out and I was really trying to prepare. And then once November came, I decided I was still gonna write 20,000 words, but I wasn't gonna try and write it in any chronological order or have it make any sense, which I still don't know if this was a good choice or not, but I decided I was just like, I'm just gonna write. And then somehow I managed to write 20,000 words. And so I was writing just random scenes, random bits of dialogue, random character interactions, and all of this, I think, was written, this is something I find very fascinating. I think every single thing I wrote back at that time in November 2019 was from Quinn's perspective, who, I've definitely mentioned this before, that Tristan is the protagonist of my story, and so therefore it's his perspective that we're following. And in what I was writing in 2019, Quinn was definitely the protagonist, and he was far more developed than Tristan, and it was his perspective that we were following. And after I wrote all that stuff in November, I don't know at what point I decided to have the narrator change. Speaking of me not being able to remember everything, I don't know what happened between November and July, but somewhere in that time frame, a bunch of stuff changed. A plot came to me, and I started the preparation for my first draft. I think in about June of 2020, I discovered Notion, but prior to this, I'd exclusively been using Google Docs and the NaNoWriMo website to do everything. But once I discovered Notion, I used that to create a chapter by chapter outline, and then I think I filled in like the first 5 chapters, and then I was off. And I remember just feeling it's so weird to think back on now that I've written so much stuff. It felt so weird to write, but it was also so exciting because it was like, these are the characters that have lived inside my brain for so long, but now I actually get to create something with them, like something more solid than the stuff that I wrote for NaNoWriMo, and try and create this story and this thing that I've been wanting to create and that I've gone through so many different versions of, but now I feel like I finally found something that sticks. And clearly that's exactly what happened, because here I am, almost at the end of my second draft, following the same general story. And primarily because it was the summertime and I had no school and like no real other responsibilities, I just wrote pretty much every single day for the entirety of that summer. And as I wrote more and more consistently, I started to gain more traction and I started to feel more confident in my writing. And that's not to say that I didn't fall into some holes in my plot or situations where I had no idea where I was going and then I had an idea for something like near the ending. In the debate between plotter and pantser, I don't feel like I'm a pantser. Like, that feels wrong to say, but I think technically I am. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, because I do like to outline, but it just always ends up falling apart as I actually sit down and start writing the draft, because I did not know the ending when I started my first draft. I was like, I only know what happens in the first 4 chapters, and then we'll see what happens from there. And I think that's what works for me, because I know that when I've tried to sit down and write an outline and really make a concrete outline, it's never worked out. I've always just been like, I just can't do this. And I also know that like in that actual process of drafting, I get so many new ideas that it just wouldn't make sense for me to try and stick to one outline that I created like 3 months prior. So I guess what I'm saying is that I fall somewhere between the middle of plotting and pantsing. And so back to like actually writing my first draft. I know that from July to August, I was writing a lot because it was summertime, and I was probably feeling very motivated and pumped because it was near the beginning. I was like, oh my god, I'm doing this. This is my first ever book. And then I think I took a break. For me, taking a week-long break at the beginning of September felt like the end of the world. I remember that it felt so weird not writing for a whole week. And then I think it took me until the end of September to start writing consistently again, and then I ended up finishing on October 16th of 2020. And this draft ended up being 73,000 words long. And I think that considering this is my first book, or I should say first draft, but it's also my first book, I guess, I wrote this really quickly, but I think that's primarily just because I had no school. I wrote most of it during the summertime, and there's something major I need to talk about. In the time frame between NaNoWriMo and me actually writing my first draft, I thought this was going to be a novella, which is completely mind-blowing to me. I thought, I don't even know what I wanted to happen in it. I think that's the issue, is that I didn't know what was going to happen in it. So I was like, let's just do a novella and see what happens. I think when I started, my word count goal was 50,000 words. My word count goal just kept on going up and going up as I kept on writing, because I was like, this needs to be longer. I need to talk about this too. Initially, my goal, I think because it was initially going to be a novella, my goal was for the end of August. So I gave myself like less than 2 months, because I started a little bit into July. Less than 2 months to write my whole first book. I mean, it was going to be a novella, but then I remember when I took my break for like half of September or something, I was like, oh my god, I wanted to finish this by the end of August. I'm a failure. Like, I literally thought that to myself. I was like, what am I doing? I'm gonna end up finishing this in October? And it's just, it's funny to see how things changed with my second draft, because my second draft process has been a lot more shaky. This is what my graph basically looks like on my word count. It goes like this. I just imagine. And then it goes, I hope that made sense. Basically what I'm saying is that there were several moments or long periods of time where I didn't write anything. Why am I speaking past tense? I'm still writing my second draft, and I've been on a break for like 13 days. So basically, I finished my second draft. No, I finished my first draft in October, the middle of October. And for some reason, I thought to myself, on November 1st, I'm going to start revising this, and I'm going to go print it out, and I'm going to read all of it in one sitting or in one day, and then I'm going to start getting ready for draft 2. And I had seen writing advice saying, absolutely don't do that. Like, I think I remember reading, like, wait, like, at least 1 month after you've written your draft to go back and read it over. But I was like, I've been working on this project for so long, and it's become such a huge part of my daily life that I just want to get back to working on it, and I just want to start writing draft 2. I think that's what my mindset was. But then, in case you've been following my writing vlog since the beginning, it took me until April 1st of 2021 to start writing my second draft, and it took me until the middle of January to actually sit down and read through all of this. Looking through this it's really weird. It's like a weird experience because I haven't read this in its entirety since January, and so it feels really weird seeing the stuff I wrote, because it's really exciting writing a book. Like, are you kidding me? Basically, if I finished in the middle of October, it took me until the middle of January to actually start revising my first draft, but pretty much all the revision I did was just reading it over and saying, that was bad, but I'm proud of it. But for draft 2, draft 2 is gonna have to be a lot different. That was my revision process, was literally me like sitting down and filming that one writing vlog where I read all of it in one day, and then me being like, well, gotta change a lot of stuff. I think what I'm trying to say is that I took a relatively long break, really not that long, between me finishing draft 1 and starting draft 2. And I think that when you're taking a break from writing, or taking a break from just working on one specific project, that is when the best ideas come to you, because you'll just be doing something and then you'll think of something. And when you come back to working on it, it's just like this, it's like everything is clear and it's like you're seeing everything for the first time. I guess that's the end of my writing process. So I'm tired. My throat hurts. I feel like I've given you simultaneously so much information and absolutely none at the same time. I would talk about like how I use Google Docs and what I use to track my word counts, which is Pacemaker, although I am interested in getting Scrivener. Maybe I'll do the free trial sometime soon. But Pacemaker is the website that I use for tracking like my word count, achieving my word count goals. I absolutely love it. It is a godsend. I would highly recommend checking it out if you're looking for something to keep track of your word count goals. I wish that I could give more advice on how to write your own book, but it sounds stupid to say just do it. But I think that's my advice. It's just that you have to go and do it. I feel bad because I feel like I wanted this video to be more educational than it turned out being, because it ended up just me being like, when I was 12, I thought of some characters in my brain. Now those characters are in a book. And I also feel weird, and I also feel kind of weird talking about this considering the fact that I have nothing published and that you have absolutely zero idea what is in here. Like this document could contain literally anything. It's a book, but it's not necessarily anywhere near a book like this, which is what I'm reading right now. One day, this will turn into this, and I hope you'll be there to see it when that happens, because I plan on making writing videos for hopefully however long it takes. If you are wanting to write a book, if you have that one idea that has been with you for years and years or months and months, I strongly encourage you to just try and find the time in your life to really sit down and get working on it, because I promise you, you can do it. Because if I was capable of sitting down and basically forcing myself to write this whole thing, you can do it too. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.